The scorched landscape stretched endlessly, cracked earth glowing under a blood-red sky. Smoke rose from distant craters, carrying the stench of burning metal and alien flesh. The apex hunters had tracked him here, convinced the human was alone, weak and cornered. Their towering forms moved with terrifying precision, claws scraping against rocks, eyes gleaming like molten gold. The human's chest heaved as he crouched behind the jagged remains of a collapsed alien vessel. His armor was scorched, torn in several places, and his hands trembled, not from fear, but from the cold calculation of knowing he had no room for mistakes. He could hear the hunters' voices, a harsh, guttural chorus of victory, mocking his futile struggle. "You cannot survive," one of the hunters snarled, stepping closer, its shadow stretching like a living nightmare. "We are the end of all who oppose us. You are alone. You are finished." The human's eyes narrowed, and he spoke without raising his voice. I am not what you think." A harsh laugh erupted from the lead hunter, shaking the cracked ground beneath them. "Brave words for a creature who can't even stand. Come forward, human. Embrace your death." He did not move. He stayed low, assessing. The hunters circled him like predators savoring the kill. Each step they took was precise, a deadly rhythm that threatened to crush hope before it could breathe. Yet, something in the human's gaze betrayed neither despair nor fear. It was a calm, unsettling stillness, like a storm held in pause. The hunters closed in, their talons digging deep into the ground, sparks flying with each strike. One of them lunged, claws slashing through the air, and the human barely rolled to the side, feeling the wind from the attack brush his cheek. The sting of near death surged adrenaline through his veins. He felt it, the sharp, electric tingle of survival instinct, but more than that, a quiet voice inside him, something primal, watching, waiting. "You can run, but you cannot hide," another hunter growled, teeth bared, saliva dripping in fiery sparks from its maw. Its voice was a grating echo that seemed to shake the horizon. "Soon you will fall and we will feast." The human's hand went to the small device strapped to his wrist, a faint glow pulsing under his fingers. He knew they thought it was just a gadget, a toy, nothing more. They didn't realize it was the key, a trigger to forces they could not imagine. He clenched his jaw and swallowed the rising fear. Survival was no longer about fighting. They had underestimated him. A sudden tremor shook the ground, faint at first, almost imperceptible. The hunters paused, ears twitching, claws digging deeper into the dirt. One of them hissed, tilting its head. "Do you feel it?" The human's lips curled into a slight, almost invisible smile. "Yes, I feel it too." From the shadows, a flicker of movement caught the hunter's eyes. Something massive and fluid slipped between the fractured rocks, silent but swift. The human remained motionless, his heart beating like a war drum. The hunters snarled, eyes scanning the horizon. This was no ordinary ambush. Something unseen had entered the arena, something alive and intelligent. "Show yourself," the lead hunter roared, claws slashing at the air, creating arcs of molten sparks. "Do not hide from me." Nothing answered, yet the hunters were uneasy. Every instinct screamed that the ground beneath them had changed, that the air carried whispers of a predator they could not see. They were apex hunters, creatures of death and dominance, yet even they felt a flicker of doubt. The human's mind raced. He could see them faltering, their confidence cracking like fragile glass. His breath slowed, steady, controlled as he let the tension build, knowing the unseen force was listening to him, waiting for his command. He whispered under his breath, words meant only for himself, "It is time. Soon they will learn what I truly am." The hunters advanced again, slower this time, cautious. Every step they took made the ground tremble, but the human's calm eyes betrayed nothing. Inside, a storm was ready to break, a storm they could not comprehend. Yet they did not know how close the human was to awakening the weapon they could never predict. A small, sharp whistle pierced the air, a sound almost like a bird's call, but harsher, charged with energy. The hunters froze, nostrils flaring. Something moved behind them, fast and unseen, brushing against the scorched terrain. One hunter turned too late, claws swinging blindly, only to be met with emptiness. A chill ran through their spines, the first real fear they had ever known. The human allowed himself a small, satisfied breath. His body was battered, yes, but his mind was sharp, his resolve unbroken. He had been underestimated, and that mistake would cost the apex hunters dearly. He didn't need to fight yet. They thought the battle was over, that they had already won. And that illusion, he knew, would be their undoing. The scorched air trembled with a strange vibration, almost like the planet itself was holding its breath. The hunters' confidence, once solid as stone, wavered. They shifted uneasily, claws scraping the cracked earth, tails flicking with irritation. The human crouched low, eyes scanning the horizon. His heartbeat was steady now, controlled, but inside, a storm of anticipation raged. From the jagged rocks and shattered remains of alien machinery, shadows began to stir. At first, the hunters thought it was the wind, or dust blown across the barren land. But the movement grew sharper, more deliberate. One of the smaller hunters hissed and turned its head sharply. "Do you see them?" it snarled, voice trembling slightly. "Something moves, alive." "Not him. Something else." The human's lips curved into the faintest smile. "They're here," he whispered, barely audible, yet filled with authority. "Do not let them see fear." A low growl rolled across the distance, faint at first, but deep and resonant. The hunters froze, their instincts screaming that they were no longer the apex predators of this battlefield. One hunter, a massive creature with spiked shoulders, leaned forward, claws digging into the soil. "Show yourself," it roared, teeth bared. "Face us, coward." The shadows shifted again, faster this time. From the darkness emerged creatures the hunters had never seen. Sleek, powerful, yet agile, their eyes glowing faintly in the red light. They were smaller than the apex hunters but moved with deadly grace, each step calculated, each motion precise. Muscles rippled beneath their skin and every claw, fang, and tail suggested lethal intent. The hunters hissed and backed away instinctively. What are they?" one whispered, fear creeping into its voice. "They are not ours. They are wrong." "They are mine," the human said, voice calm but commanding. He stepped slightly forward, showing himself, battered and bloodied but standing tall. "And you are about to learn why you should have left me alone." The creatures froze for a moment, sensing the human's command, then advanced with astonishing speed. They moved as one, a silent wave of calculated precision, cutting through the terrain like shadows brought to life. The hunters tried to strike, claws slashing, but the unseen allies darted around them effortlessly, slipping through gaps, striking at their flanks, then vanishing into the smoke and debris. The battlefield erupted into chaos. Sparks flew as claws collided, earth exploded under sudden leaps, and the hunters found themselves caught off guard at every turn. The human moved with calm purpose, never panicked, guiding the creatures with subtle gestures, small whistles and low hums. Each movement unleashed new surprises, turning the hunters' experience and strategy into a trap they could not escape. One hunter leapt high, aiming to crush the human, only to find itself ensnared by vines or ropes of alien origin, snapping tight and holding it suspended in midair. Its roar echoed across the rocky plains, trembling with confusion and fury. The human glanced toward it, voice steady, "Patience. You will see everything." The smaller hunters, sensing the tide turning, grouped together, circling the human and his allies. "It's controlling them," one growled. "This human, he commands the beasts." A sudden screech cut through the air, higher and sharper than anything the hunters had ever heard. From above, creatures descended like shadows of knives, claws extended, wings slicing the smoke. They struck with precision, cutting paths that forced the hunters into defensive stances. Each strike was quick, clean, calculated, leaving wounds but never overextending. The human's voice rose over the chaos, calm yet filled with authority. "Do not fear them. Fear me if you must. Your arrogance ends here." The lead hunter bared its teeth, lunging at the human, but the creatures intervened. One slammed into it from behind, another lunged from the side, and the hunter fell to the ground, struggling, confused. Its pride was shattered, its confidence replaced by the raw sting of uncertainty. The human's calm eyes met the hunter's. "You thought you had won," he said, voice steady as stone. "But victory is not given to those who kill blindly." The ground trembled again, more violently this time, and the hunters looked around wildly. Something else was coming, something bigger though still unseen. Their instincts screamed that the battlefield was no longer theirs to command. From the smoke and crumbling rocks, the creatures aligned, forming a wall around the human. Each hiss, each growl was a warning. The hunters faltered. They were apex predators, but the human had shifted the balance. He was no longer a target, they were facing a force they could not calculate, an intelligence they had underestimated. The human took a slow breath, scanning the horizon. "Soon," he whispered, more to himself than anyone else, "you will understand what true power is." His eyes glinted, calm but sharp, as the creatures around him waited, silent yet ready. The hunter's victory had been an illusion. The real battle had just begun. The first signs of doubt flickered across their eyes, and the air felt heavier, charged with anticipation. The hunters snarled, claws digging deeper, but now fear had replaced arrogance. The human had allies they could not see, a force they could not predict, and their carefully calculated plan was crumbling. And in that moment the human realized something: he was not just surviving anymore. He was preparing to awaken the weapon that would make the apex hunters rethink everything they believed about strength, dominance, and fear. The sun dipped lower behind jagged cliffs, casting long, twisted shadows across the scarred battlefield. Smoke swirled in the air, mixing with the metallic scent of blood and scorched rock. The hunters had regrouped, circling the human and the strange creatures around him. Their movements were cautious now, measured, eyes darting for threats that no one could see. The human stood tall, chest heaving from exertion, but his calmness unsettled the hunters more than fear ever could. He scanned the horizon, sensing the right moment. His allies, the unseen predators, crouched in perfect synchrony, muscles taut, eyes glowing faintly in the red twilight. One hunter hissed sharply, its tail lashing the cracked ground. "You are mine," it snarled, claws scraping rocks, sparks flying with every step. "Your tricks will not save you." The human tilted his head slightly, his lips curling into a faint, confident smile. "I never meant to hide," he said softly, almost teasing. "I only waited for the right moment." Then, without warning, the creatures surged forward like a wave of living shadows. Fast, precise, and terrifying, they struck from all directions. The hunter's claws swung wildly, but the human's allies moved in ways they could not anticipate, evading attacks and hitting weak points they hadn't even noticed. One hunter roared as a sleek, muscular creature leapt onto its back, teeth sinking into thick armor, dragging it to the ground. Another hunter hissed, spinning around, only to find a trio of predators blocking its escape, tails lashing like whips. The human moved calmly through the chaos, almost like he was dancing amid death. He raised his hand, signaling a coordinated strike. From the rocks, hidden beasts appeared, their jaws snapping, claws slicing, forcing the hunters to stagger backward. The ground shook under the impact, sending shards of stone flying. Sparks and smoke mixed with the alien cries, turning the battlefield into a scene of pure chaos. One of the hunters, a massive creature covered in armored plates, bellowed in fury. "Enough!" it roared, swiping at the predators. But each swing was met with careful evasion, calculated counterattacks that left it unbalanced. The human's calm voice cut through the din: "Control your anger or you will fall faster." The hunters hesitated. None had faced a human who could orchestrate a battle like this, turning creatures into extensions of his will. Doubt crept into their minds, fear mingling with their rage. "How?" one whispered, trembling. "How can a mere human?" Before it could finish, a predator lunged, slamming into its flank, knocking it sideways. The hunter crashed into rocks, sparks flying, and its roar turned into a strangled cry of frustration. The human's eyes flicked to it, sharp and calculating. "You are strong," he said, voice calm, "but strength without awareness is nothing." Another hunter charged, aiming directly for the human, claws extended to tear him apart. But the human was ready. He sidestepped, barely moving, and tapped a small device on his wrist. A pulse of energy flashed across the ground, invisible yet powerful. The creature stumbled, a low growl of confusion escaping its throat. Its momentum faltered, and the predators seized the moment, leaping in from all sides, striking with deadly precision. The battlefield erupted further. Rocks exploded under the predator's impact, dust and debris filling the air. The hunters screamed in fury and frustration, attempting to regroup, but every step was met with another calculated attack. They had underestimated him, foolishly, fatally. A smaller hunter hissed, crouching behind a jagged boulder, breathing heavily. Its golden eyes flicked nervously to the human. "He is not fighting alone. He controls them. Every strike, every move, he plans it." The human glanced at the hunter, nodding slightly, almost in acknowledgement of its realization. "Yes," he whispered, voice calm but deadly. "I see everything. I control everything you cannot even imagine." Suddenly, the largest of the predators, a massive creature with claws like scythes, leapt high into the air and landed squarely in front of the lead hunter. The hunter tried to swipe, but the creature moved with inhuman speed, striking and retreating, leaving the hunter off balance. The human took a step forward, eyes burning with intensity. "Do you feel fear?" he asked softly. "Good. It suits you." Panic began to ripple through the hunters. Their coordinated strikes, once deadly, now felt clumsy, misdirected. Every attack was anticipated, every escape cut off. The human's unseen allies, moving as extensions of his will, created chaos so perfectly that the hunters could not respond in time. Each second brought more wounds, more confusion, and more terror. A deafening roar echoed across the battlefield as the human's voice rose, commanding his allies like a conductor leading an orchestra of destruction. Sparks flew as claws tore through armored plating, and the hunters staggered, desperation in their eyes. They had thought this human was helpless. They had thought victory was certain. Now, as predators struck from every angle and the human's presence radiated calm authority amid chaos, it became clear, they had been wrong. The hunters were no longer the masters of the battlefield. And in that moment the first strike was complete. The hunters realized with growing terror that they were not facing a simple human. They were facing something far more dangerous, something that had been waiting, hidden, patient, and ready to turn the tide of the battle in an instant. The battlefield was a storm of dust, sparks, and frantic movement. The hunters struggled to regain their balance, their eyes wide with disbelief and fear. Every attack they tried to launch was intercepted, every movement anticipated. The human stood at the center, calm and unshaken, like a conductor orchestrating chaos. Yet beneath that calm, something deeper stirred, a power even he had not fully revealed. One of the hunters, a towering brute covered in jagged armor, snapped its jaws. "Stop him," it roared. "He cannot be allowed to control them." The human's lips curved into a slow, confident smile. "You misunderstand," he said softly, almost a whisper. "They're not mine alone. And neither am I alone." With a sudden motion he tapped the device on his wrist, and the air itself seemed to shift. A low hum rose from the ground, vibrating through rocks, sand, and metal alike. The hunters froze, senses screaming danger. The creatures around him stiffened, their bodies glowing faintly, muscles coiled like springs ready to snap. Something immense was stirring beneath the surface, something hidden, something they could not see. A massive rumble shook the battlefield, splitting cracks deeper into the earth. Dust and debris shot into the air, blinding the hunters for a moment. From one of the larger fissures, a shadow emerged, enormous, impossibly powerful, with eyes that glowed like molten silver. Its form was strange, part organic, part something beyond comprehension, muscles rippling, claws glinting, tail lashing. Every breath it drew seemed to warp the air around it. The hunters staggered backward, fear replacing the arrogance that had guided them so far. What is that?" one hissed, voice trembling. It cannot be alive." "It is," the human said, voice steady and firm. "And it has been waiting for you to make the mistake of thinking this battle was simple." The creature moved with terrifying grace, each step cracking the ground, sending shards of rock flying. Its gaze swept across the hunters, calculating, intelligent, almost human in its awareness. The hunters' coordinated strikes fell apart. The creatures that had been their prey now became their hunters. Panic rose like wildfire. One of the smaller hunters, trembling, lunged desperately at the human, claws aimed to tear through him. But before it could reach him, the enormous entity shifted in a blur of speed, striking the hunter with one massive paw. The hunter flew across the scorched plain, crashing into rocks, screaming in pain and terror. The human's voice cut through the chaos, calm but filled with authority. "This is only the beginning. Every move you make now will cost you more." The lead hunter bared its teeth, claws digging into the ground. "You cannot win," it shouted, its roar shaking the dust around them. "We are apex hunters. Death follows our path." The human tilted his head slightly, studying it with calm intensity. "You were wrong," he said simply. "Your strength means nothing without control. Your arrogance blinds you." The massive creature lunged, striking another hunter from behind, pinning it against a jagged rock. The hunter struggled, its limbs flailing, eyes wide in terror. The human's allies moved in perfect coordination, closing off escape routes, cutting down any path of retreat. Every second brought new confusion, every second brought more fear. Another hunter turned, trying to flee, but the ground itself seemed to betray it. Cracks opened beneath its feet, throwing it off balance. A predator snapped forward, dragging it down into the dust, teeth sinking into armored plating. Its scream echoed, sharp and horrifying. The human stepped forward calmly, surveying the battlefield. Sparks flew from clashing claws, smoke curled like dark fingers, and the hunters were trapped, caught in a deadly net they could not escape. His eyes glinted, sharp and cold. "I warned you," he said almost softly. "You thought you could kill without consequence. You thought you were the masters. You thought wrong." The largest hunter roared again, shaking its massive head, claws digging into the ground. Stop him. Stop it. The human raised his hand, and the massive entity shifted its weight, claws scraping the rocks, muscles coiling like a spring ready to strike. The hunters froze, their confidence shattered. The trap was fully revealed now. They were surrounded, outmatched, and underestimating nothing. Every escape, every attack, every plan had been anticipated and neutralized. The ground trembled again as the human's voice rose, commanding not just the creatures around him, but the very battlefield itself. This ends tonight. You were warned. You should have left me alone. Fear had replaced arrogance completely. The hunters' roars turned to cries, their movements uncoordinated, desperate. The human's ultimate weapon, a living, thinking, impossible force, stood between them and freedom. They had thought victory was theirs. They had thought the battle was simple. They were wrong. And in that moment, the apex hunters realized that they were no longer in control. They were trapped, facing a power beyond their imagination, a force that had been lying in wait, silent, patient, and utterly lethal. The human had revealed his hand, and the hunters would soon understand that the fight was no longer about strength, but survival against something they could never hope to predict. The battlefield had transformed into a chaotic storm of dust, smoke, and flickering sparks. The hunters were scattered, battered, and trembling, their confidence shattered completely. The human stood at the center, steady as a rock, eyes glowing faintly with quiet authority. Behind him, his ultimate weapon, a towering living entity of impossible strength, loomed like a shadow of death, muscles rippling, claws glinting under the dim light of the scorched sky. The lead hunter roared, claws raised high, voice trembling with rage and disbelief. This cannot be. I am the apex. None can defeat me. The human took a slow step forward, his voice calm but commanding, carrying across the chaos. You judged strength without understanding. You underestimated control, strategy, and patience. The massive entity shifted, a wave of raw power radiating from it, bending the air around its form. Dust and debris swirled, and the hunters flinched instinctively. The creatures that had fought alongside the human advanced, moving as extensions of his will, each movement precise, deadly, and perfectly timed. The hunters tried to strike back, but their attacks were met with calculated resistance, forcing them backward with every effort. One of the smaller hunters, shaking, hissed through clenched teeth. How is this possible? He commands them, all of them, with just a look. The human's eyes swept across the battlefield. It is not just control, he said softly. It is understanding. Every creature, every movement, every weakness. I see it all. The massive entity lunged first, moving like liquid steel. Its claws swept through the air with terrifying speed, striking the lead hunter off balance and sending it crashing into the jagged rocks. Sparks flew as claws met stone, and the hunter struggled, roaring in fury. Another predator darted in from the shadows, striking a flank hunter with a precision strike that left it staggering, injured, and terrified. The hunters tried to regroup, but the human's calm, commanding presence guided his allies perfectly. Every attack they attempted was anticipated, countered, or redirected. Fear had replaced confidence, hesitation replacing aggression. They had been apex predators, but now they were prey in a world they could not understand. The human's voice rose, firm and unyielding. You thought me weak. You thought you could destroy me. Now you see your mistake. A hunter lunged desperately at the human, claws extended, teeth bared. The human did not flinch. With a simple gesture, the massive entity blocked its path, lifting the hunter into the air and slamming it into the scorched ground. The impact shook the earth, and the hunter let out a strangled cry, powerless and terrified. Another hunter attempted to flee, dashing toward the jagged cliffs, but the creatures moved in perfect unison, cutting off every escape route. Panic rippled through the hunters as the battlefield tightened around them. Dust swirled, sparks flew, and the air vibrated with the hum of raw power. The human's calm gaze met the eyes of the lead hunter. This ends now, he said, voice steady and cold. Your arrogance brought you here, and your fear will be your undoing. The massive entity stepped forward, muscles coiling like springs, tail lashing violently, claws digging deep into the earth. Its roar rolled across the battlefield, a sound that shook the hunters' very souls. The remaining hunters faltered, terror overtaking their instincts. They had faced countless prey and challenges, yet nothing had prepared them for this. One by one the hunters fell, overwhelmed by the precise, terrifying coordination of the human and his allies. Claws, teeth, and strategy combined in a seamless dance of destruction. Every desperate roar was met with a calculated strike. Every flailing attempt was countered with perfect timing. The battlefield had become a theater of awe and fear, and the human was the unseen hand orchestrating every movement. Finally, silence began to descend. The dust settled, leaving only the human standing amidst the ruins. His allies, the living predators, remained at attention, muscles coiled but calm, awaiting his command. The hunters, battered, bloodied, and broken, could only stare in disbelief. Their dominance, their confidence, their legacy as apex hunters had been shattered completely. The human stepped forward slowly, surveying the devastation. "You were strong," he said softly, almost reverently. "But strength alone does not win wars. Understanding, patience, and unity, these are true power." The massive entity shifted, lowering itself slightly, acknowledging its master's control. The human placed a hand lightly on its head, a gesture that radiated authority and mutual respect. His allies had fought with precision, courage, and loyalty, and together they had accomplished the impossible. One of the hunters tried to speak, voice trembling, eyes wide. We were wrong, you are more than human." The human's eyes glinted. "I am what you refuse to see." Fear is born of ignorance, and arrogance blinds the strongest of hearts. The sun dipped fully behind the jagged horizon, leaving the battlefield bathed in an eerie red glow. Silence reigned, broken only by the distant groans of the defeated hunters. The human stood tall, calm, and victorious. His allies moved closer, protective but respectful, a testament to the bond he had forged. In that moment, the apex hunters understood what they had never anticipated. True power was not just physical. It was intelligence, control, and the ability to command forces beyond imagination. The human had been underestimated, dismissed, and nearly destroyed, but he had awakened the ultimate weapon, and in doing so, had rewritten the rules of survival, strength, and fear. And as the dust settled completely, the human's calm figure against the burning horizon was a vision of triumph and awe, a reminder that no apex predator could ever rule when faced with something far beyond their reckoning.